Hey everyone, so this is a call, and what I want to cover in this video is I want to talk about how to create a self-pleasure ritual. I'm going to try to do this as succinctly as possible. Other words, I'm trying to give you some guidelines. But before I get into the guidelines, I want to kind of bring up something for those of you out there who are interested in sacred sexual practices. I would like you to check out the links down below the video. The first link is for what I call the formula. It's completely free. It's a PDF and is a list of guidelines, in essence, for those individuals who are interested, once again, in creating sacred sexual practices. Also down below the video is the link for my new sexual energy coaching program, which I call Sacred Pressure. Very reasonably priced, and those are for the individuals, particularly men, who are needing a hard reset in terms of their relationship with their sexual energy. It's a video-based program. So, continuing on with the video here. So, the reason I wanted to do this video in the first place is because I'm realizing that a lot of men and women, I should also say that, although I don't think many women are watching this video, maybe if you are, a lot of the things I'm going to describe in this video you can also do. Things are slightly different, but very similar, right? We're all kind of dealing with the same energetics of the body, and so that's really what's key. So the idea in this, again, for this video, is that this is for individuals who are either wanting practice, so in other words, practice before you're with a partner, even if you do have a partner and you're on your own. 2, you just don't have a partner. Or 3, you're just curious, right? Okay, so those are good reasons to watch this video. So now, in order to create a ritual, because what is a ritual really? A ritual is a deepening. It's a deepening of an intention. So you set an intention, and then you create some sort of structure. Some wise person from the past, I don't remember who it was, said in order to manifest an ideal, you need a structure through which to in essence, to manifest it, right? So in other words, it's just an idea until you put it into action, until you create some sort of structure. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video, is how to create some sort of structure. The structure I'm going to give you is something I've used for years. This is also a structure I've taught many, many, many men in particular. So one of the reasons that, let me also back this up a little bit. So when men are in a sexual experience, oftentimes what ends up happening is that, men are one and done, right? They ejaculate and it's over. Obviously for me, this was really disappointing, and this was a pattern that I experienced in my past, particularly in my 20s. And by the time I got to my 30s, I was like, there's got to be more than this, right? But the thing that happened to me in my 20s, which was interesting, was there were a number of moments when I had these very profound experiences, like full body orgasms, like crazy tremoring, or I would start laughing hysterically or crying, or other words, I was having emotional releases. And I wasn't sure why. But over the years, I figured out why. And that's what led me down the path to want to explore Taoism and Tantra and things like that. Is I started to understand that when I'm with a partner, what ends up happening is particularly if you're intentionally connecting to that partner, it creates a pressurization of energy between the two individuals, right? There's a circular flow of energy that happens. So, but when you're operating solo, you don't have that benefit. So in other words, there are ways to bring about more profound experiences with self-pleasure, but it kind of has to be done slightly different. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some guidelines and some steps. So as I mentioned before, this is a ritual. So you have to set an intention for it to be a sacred experience, right? So you're using this ritual to connect to your sexual energy, which is largely been abused. Most of us have abused our sexual energy to varying degrees. So we're wanting to clarify the distortion, and this is one of those ways we can clarify the distortion, is through starting to respect our sexual energy as not being just sexual energy, but rather as being an aspect of our overall life force. And it's only sexual energy when that overall life force is concentrated around the genitalia. And so for a man, this is a very powerful push, right? So male sexual energy is really pushy. It is how we are electric. And so this energy can then pressurize upward through us and create very rich, powerful experiences if a certain number of things are done. First thing we have to understand is energy flows to where the attention goes. Energy flows to where the attention goes. So when you're doing sacred self-pleasuring, what you want to have your attention is focused on you, on your body, not on porn, not on fantasy. Now, am I saying porn bad, fantasy bad? No. I'm simply saying you can use fantasy and porn to some degree to get the ball rolling, right? But you don't want to lean on it. It's a really nasty crutch. So the idea here is to connect to sensation. And sensation has many, many, many layers. It's not just the genitalia that's giving you sensation. It's the whole body, okay? So that being said, after you set the intention, again, the intention is to connect to the sexual energy in a sacred manner. Then what you want to go into is some sort of centering, right? I'm going to prescribe box breathing. Very simple to do. You inhale 5 seconds, you retain the breath 5 seconds, you exhale out 5 seconds, you retain the breath out 5 seconds. Again, there's a lot of different breath practices you can do. My sexual energy coaching program has many practices involved. But in this particular case, you can just do box breathing. It's great. What it ultimately does is it slows the number of breaths per minute. As you slow the number of breaths per minute, you start to shift the behavior of your nervous system from the sympathetic branch to the parasympathetic branch. Also, you start to change how the pituitary gland, the pineal gland, and all these other glands are functioning in the body. And that's really important, right? Because the glands and the nervous system are what grant you experience, right? And so, in other words, in essence, they are the filter for energy. They are filtering and presenting to you through your sensory system energy. So all sensations that you experience are, in essence, energy, okay? That's also a very key understanding. So once you're centered, and again, the box breathing, you could do that for 3, 5, 10 minutes. It doesn't so much matter. You just do it until you're centered, okay? So immediately, I guarantee most of you, if you got to that point, it's a vastly different experience of yourself already, right? Now, when you go into the self-pleasuring piece, so before you get to the self-pleasuring, let me bring up something really quick. Some of us need to do a little more body work, right? So in other words, we need to do some cat-cows, you can do some spine flexes, you can do spine twists. There's a lot of different exercises you can do to connect to your body. Do a little bit of yoga, right? If you feel tight and you need more, do more. But again, it's not essential. That's not the essential component here, right? What's essential here, again, is that you're centered. That's the essential part. So now, progressing from the centering, and let's say now we go into the self-pleasuring piece. Now, the idea is that the male genitalia is like a turbocharger, right? It is our electric aspect. So when we activate that energy, it will create a force or a pressure. There are conditions connected to this, though. Those conditions are relative to what you have done prior, right? So not just immediately prior, meaning do you have a full belly, right? So not a great idea to have a bunch of food inside you. It could cause, gas or bloating. Again, you're going to be agitating a lot of energy, so you don't really want to have a full stomach. The other thing is, what are your practices in general? How strong is your nervous system? How steady are you, right? Excuse me. Have you been, in other words, what's your ejaculation pattern? Are you ejaculating every day? Are you ejaculating once a week? Do you have practices that you're doing prior? All this is building and building and building pressure, right? So the whole process is tension and release, tension and release, tension and release, or building pressure and releasing pressure, right? Soon as you activate that sexual energy, particularly if you're centered within yourself, you start to increase the pressure gradient. So chronically over time, if you've refrained from ejaculation for 2 days, for a week, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 40 days, ideally 40 days. Now, 40 days is the amount of time it takes in order to alter how the nervous system is behaving. The nervous system will take on new patterns over time. And so that's really, really key to keep in mind. Like if you really want to build up a lot of powerful sexual energy, if you want to become very sexually magnetic, then what ends up happening is you need to change how you're resonating, how you're vibrating. You need to change how you're programming your field. If you're masturbating the porn all the time and you're ejaculating, you're always lowering the internal pressure. And also, you're programming the field. Every orgasm you have is a peak experience. Peak experiences get programmed in the aura, in the electromagnetic field. Just keep that in mind. So, now going back to how this works. So if you've done practices prior, and again, my sexual energy coaching program down below the video, great practices there. Anyway, the idea here is that you're building up this energy, right? So you're doing all these practices, you're building the energy. So when you go into a self-pleasure practice, then now we're going to speak more acutely, right? So maybe you're fasting. Fasting is amazing. It's great to sort of really let energy flow. All right, so that's something you can consider. Something else is also the duration of your self-pleasuring practice. So let me give you some guidelines. Basically what you're doing is you're building yourself up, right? In other words, you're self-pleasuring, you build yourself up, and then you're backing off. You build yourself up, you're backing off. And this reflects how partnered tantra work actually happens as well. So as you're building yourself and you're backing off, what you're doing is you're increasing the pressure gradient overall. So I like to do at least 3 times, and sometimes I'll go up to about 7 or 8 different times where I'm building myself and backing off. Build up, back off, build up, back off, build up, back off. Now, what am I building up to? I'm building up to usually about a 7 or an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 is ejaculation. It's over. 1 is you're flaccid, there's nothing going on. So now why am I choosing a 7 or an 8? Because I don't want to ejaculate, right? So I can tell a 7 or 8 is usually I'm about 15 seconds away from ejaculation. In other words, I'm kind of close, but I'm not there. And so then what I'm doing is I'm applying technique at that moment, right? So I don't apply the technique always. I apply it when I feel it's correct. So in other words, sometimes I'll just build myself up and then I back it off. I let it rest, I let it simmer. And then I build myself up, back it off, let it rest, let it simmer. Now, the application of technique, there's several techniques out there. All the techniques are the same. They're all about gathering, in essence, compressing our life force energy in towards our body's center channel, or you could call it the shushumna, right? That's a name for the body center channel. So when we do these contraction practices, right? Montauk Chia, the body electric school, they call it the big draw. They just tell you to tighten up your whole body. You're tightening your toes, your fingers, your arms. You're creating all this tension, right? That works. To me, it's sloppy. It's imprecise. So I like to do what I call Mahabandha, or the Great Lock. There is another Mahabandha out there which you can do during a yoga practice, which is different. But the Mahabandha, as I teach, I'll go ahead and describe that. So quick contraction, tip of the penis towards the base, right? So again, you're up around a 7 or an 8. You keep the friction going. So you got to keep the stimulation going. You may want to back off on the pacing a little bit, but you keep the stimulation going. Quick contraction, tip of the penis to the base towards the perineum. Sniff of air in, you tighten your belt line, which then will tighten the rib cage, tighten the torso, right? So you're tightening, 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 tongue goes to the roof of the mouth, you release your eyes upward. Energy flows to where the attention goes. Boom, right? Now, if you have sufficient heat built up, you could provoke very powerful catharsis, or the release of emotion. Emotion, I'm going to redefine that at this moment. Emotion is energy in motion, right? It doesn't mean crying. It doesn't mean anything about that, right? Yeah, maybe you'll cry. Yes, maybe you'll laugh. It's simply energy in motion. So we're talking about, this is very non-specific, okay? So build yourself back you off, build up, back off, build up, back off. Let's say by round 3 or 4, you're like, yeah, I got some heat here, right? So you got that heat. So when you contract, what you're grabbing for is sensation, right? You're trying to grab for sensation. You contract, tip of the penis towards the base. What you're grabbing is the sexual energy, the horny feeling, the hot, heated feeling. You're just grabbing it, pulling it inward, right? And then as you tighten, sniff of air in, tongue, eyes. And there's a lot of ways to do this. You can do it as sniffs, where you just keep grabbing and grabbing and grabbing, and you can create this wave-like effect, right? Or you can just do it once. Tighten and hold, and then release. Right? Even if you're not even self-stimulating, if you do these practices, it's actually really kind of pleasant. You can create this tension and release process. So again, this is what you're doing while you're self-pleasuring. Now, after you've done the self-pleasuring, I would say almost, if not potentially even as important, is what you're doing after. So after you self-pleasure, you want to remember you're wanting to utilize your whole body. Oh, one other thing before I go into that. I do recommend doing this whole process standing. Why? Connects you heaven to earth. The erection, right? The man's erection, what does it do? It points upward, right? Or slightly out. I guess it can go different angles, whatever. But the idea, though, is that it's also going to sort of point to heaven, right? So we want to follow the natural flow of energy. In other words, you could say also that the male genitalia aligns itself with the spinal cord. So if you do this whole process standing, you're likely to have a greater impact, a more positive effect, because you're lining up with a natural polarity. So, okay, now, after you've self-pleasured, again, in a standing position, then what you want to do is you want to start to activate the entire body. You want to create sensation all over the body. That means you rub your ears, you rub your face, you rub your head, you can rub all over the body, your chest, you can pound, you can make sounds, you make noise. Bring it, right? Bring all the sensation, rubbing and pounding and whatever you got to do. And again, the idea here is you're activating the body's nitric oxide system. Really interesting. If you want to look it up, go ahead and look up nitric oxide in the body and what it does. In essence, dilates things or relaxes things, right? It relaxes blood vessels, and to some degree, probably the musculature in the body as well. So when you're rubbing, it starts to create this heat and this tingling sensations, and this is all part of the nitric oxide experience, right? So after you've rubbed all over the body, you've made sounds, you can do vowel sounds, ah, oh, whatever it is. Again, you're creating vibrations. Then, for me, the best part, even if I've given myself multiple orgasms and I've done all this like really profound, intense work, for me, it's the aftercare that's most important, or what I call the simmering period. So the simmering period is when you simply lay down and you relax, right? So you simply lay down and relax, and you allow the energies to find their homeostasis or their balance. In other words, you've created so much sensation. You've moved around so much energy, and now you can just bask and enjoy. And I will guarantee after all this process, you're going to come up out of that simmering period, and you're going to feel amazing. You may need to do some more breathing or some breath work, or perhaps some mantra or some meditation afterwards, after you kind of come up out of what's in essence a shavasana or a deep relaxation. And the reason you may want to center up is you may feel a little bit floaty, right? It's kind of like that floaty, slightly spacey feeling. So I would recommend at that point, and also I should mention really quick, as you're rubbing all over the body and you're doing all these sounds, don't forget your legs. Get the legs, the inner thighs, the outer thighs, the front of the thighs, the back of the thighs, rub, 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 all over, okay? So as you're coming up out of all this like simmering period, you may want to center. You could do a lot of different centering practices. There's a lot of different things you could do. For me, I'll just pull root lock and breathe long and deep for a bit. My awareness is on my tongue, so I'm holding this root lock. The other word for root lock is mula bandha, which is basically you contract your anus, your perineum, your genitals, you pull in your belt line, and just do some nice long deep breathing until you feel like you've grounded back into your body. So I believe that's most of the process. So with all that said, hopefully you really enjoy this video, and hopefully you find this practical, because in the end, what you're really wanting to do is to reinvent your relationship with that sexual energy, which then also means you're reinventing your relationship with your body. And also a key is for men, there's all this really weird relationship with our penises. This process, if done on a regular basis over time, will change your relationship with your penis itself. So with all that said, thank you for watching.